Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bantamweight Boxing Podcast. Pound for pound, the best boxing podcast around. I'm your host, Michael Waight, and joined with me are two of my brothers, two of the Waight brothers. Do you both want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'll go first because I'm the best weight brother. I'm Johan. Enjoyed tonight's podcast. It's gonna be a good one. It's a great fight coming up. Looking forward to chatting about this one.
Yeah, and look, I'm the baddest, and I'm looking forward to the fight on Saturday night. You can't beat a good AJ fight in front of a full capacity crowd.
Yeah, well, it's finally here, the big one, AJ versus Usyk. We've been waiting for a big boxing fight for a while now. We've been starved a little bit in the heavyweight division, but it's finally here. So let's just not mess about. Let's just get straight into some questions, some talking points. Jörn, I'm probably going to go to you first.
Yeah.
There's a few questions we can go through, but there's actually just so much to unpack with this fight, isn't it? Because there's so many question marks around, well, mainly around Usyk at heavyweight. But one thing I'd like to pose to you is, where do you rank Usyk as kind of in the difficulty level for one of AJ's opponents? Like, where do you see him? You know, you've seen him fight Ruiz, his second fight against Ruiz, very difficult fight for him. Klitschko, obviously. Where do you rank Usyk in this difficulty?
Yeah, that's a difficult question in lots of ways. But one of the things that I find with what you mentioned, the Klitschko fight, the most important thing to me is it was an exciting fight. And I know this ain't really answer your question, but I think that's what's most important. I was saying to you earlier, right? I got a terrible headache coming on, and that's given to me from the gods, right? Because there's something going to happen at the end of this week. There's going to be some pain. There's going to be some drama. There's going to be, and that's the joy. I think there's going to be a lot of joy. Yeah, and I think I see a little bit of. I think there's insight in the Klitschko fight and some of the drama in the Klitschko fight. I think there's some insight in some of the drama in the first Ruiz fight, and I think that there's elements of those fights that Usyk, with his skill level, will bring into that. Like I said, it's not a fight; it's a drama. It's going to be a drama unfolding, and I think we're going to see one of the most exciting fights in recent years in the heavyweight division. Comparable, maybe not in terms of detail, but comparable in that kind of heart-stopping stuff that we saw with the Klitschko fight. To compare Usyk to Klitschko or to Ruiz, I think, that isn't an easy thing to do. And I think at the moment, a lot of people commenting on the fight, they're trying to say sensible things about the fight. They're trying to make obvious predictions about the way the way the fight's going to happen. All I can see is I can just see excitement. I'm just really excited about it. Jim has always been a big fan of AJ, and I've never given AJ the credit that he's due. I know he's due credit. I don't know, maybe it's all that Under Armour fucking stuff and, his poster boy stuff. Maybe it's a resentment and an envy. And you see Fat Fury undermining him in skillful, intelligent and funny ways. So I've never given AJ the credit. And I think I said last week, and I'll say it again, if he comes through the Usyk fight and wins, I think that he is at a level that I don't think I've ever given him credit for. But I will give him that credit if he does that. And my gut feeling is that he will win that fight. But I think it will be a super exciting fight. I think when it was first talked about and they talked about the size thing, I think the size thing is not going to be as much of an issue as that was the first way that I could only see that fight. The big brawny guy is gonna that we talked before about the last Loma fight, etc. Or not the last Loma fight. Yeah. The fight I mean. But yeah, skill level. I think you got to bear in mind that he fought an old Klitschko, right? And I know he rolled back the years, but he did fight an old Klitschko, and he fought a Klitschko who had a very defined way of fighting that served him well up to a point in that fight, and maybe, as some of the commentators said at the time, actually meant that he didn't enable him to finish AJ when he had an opportunity to. But I think in terms of skill level, well, you've got to say that Usyk is the most skilled fighter that he's going to face. But is he the most dangerous? I think that Ruiz and Klitschko in many ways there were more dangerous elements to his game. Because I think we know what's coming with Usyk. We just don't know what level he's going to bring. Yeah, I think other commentators. I mean, I'm only saying things other commentators have said, but that's that's the general impression that I have as well. What level is he going to bring? AJ always seems to do a lot to try and adapt to who's in front of him. No, I won't say too much on sources. This is wrapped up in some of the other questions you're going to ask Jim as well.
Yeah.
So I'll probably just stop it there. I probably haven't answered that question
Yeah,
directly.
no, I was going to say,
my passion just
You
won't
should
let
be a
me.
fucking politician, mate, because I think you've done everything to answer the question.
Yeah, and just chatted a load of bollocks.
I answer my question. It ain't bollocks. It ain't bollocks.
In brilliant Johan fashion, he's said everything but answer my question. But you've spoken a lot of sense there, and I do want to touch on actually one thing you mentioned. And in the build-up to this fight, there has been a lot of talk about the different sizes and how much of an impact that's going to play, or how much of a role it's going to play. And I'm actually siding with you a little bit. I'm not convinced that the size will play a bigger role as people think. Because people look at Usyk, although he is a cruiserweight, the guy's still 6'3", 6'4". He's not a small, he's an average size heavyweight. Obviously Fury and AJ are massive, and Wilder or whatever, but he's not small by any means. Whether he fills out well in the weight physically is another story. But
Fury made a wonderful, as is one of Fury's great strengths, he made that wonderful comment about how Usyk has kind of underperformed in his last two fights at heavyweight to kind of give Joshua, to lull him into a false sense of security. Now, that's probably not true at all, but it's just a wonderful little way in which Fury, which is one of the great parts of his game, is able to get into other fighters' heads and undermine them slightly. And I thought that's probably in the run-up to this fight, where I've been disappointed not to see some of the antics of Usyk, and maybe they are to come. He's not been at his funniest self, but that comment from Fury so far has been my best pre-fight comment. That kind of way
he will not give AJ anything, will he? He will not give him.
No, not a thing
anything.
at all.
I think that's a sign of respect, isn't it? Inadvertently, he knows that AJ poses a threat, and that's why he undermines him at every turn, because he knows that if he can gain a psychological advantage, that may be the difference when they do.
What in your mind though, Jim? What is that threat? What is it that Fury sees in AJ?
It's the power. Look, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
Fury is a better boxer than AJ, but what AJ has and that Fury doesn't is he's got, Fury's got power, but AJ is in my opinion, on a different level.
Yeah, one punch power, isn't it? One punch knockout power. But
you look at. I know AJ fought Klitschko when he was a bit older, but you look at the Klitschko fight with AJ and you look at the Klitschko fight with Fury. It's like two different fucking sports.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Well, talking about AJ, I can move on to a slightly different question now. Jim, what would be your game plan if you were in AJ's corner going into this fight against Usyk? What would you be telling AJ to do? What would be your game plan?
I think you got AJ's all about confidence. AJ is more so than most boxers. He performs well when his confidence is high. He's got to build his way into that fight. He's got to use his reach advantage in those first couple of rounds. That jab, like a hammer, he's got to ping that off first couple of rounds, win the first few rounds, build up his confidence, and then go in for the kill. Usyk is a great fighter, probably the most skillful fighter in the division. But if AJ can put him away, it will be a great learning curve to take on someone as skillful as Tyson Fury. Because with Fury, you've not just got the skill, you've also got the power, you've got the reach. So I think this is the perfect fight for AJ, because if he can't overcome Usyk, he's not got a chance against Fury. But if he can put Usyk away in the first 6 rounds, then that and Fury, which I'm sure will come for his Wilder fight, that tees up probably one of the greatest British boxing fights of all time.
Yeah. Maybe like I said before, maybe I'm not giving AJ the respect he's due, but I can't agree completely with what you're saying in as much as Usyk being a stepping stone towards Fury. I mean, I even see Usyk putting Tyson Fury away, to be completely honest. I can see Usyk beating either of them. I do think that that AJ is going to win this fight, but I wouldn't see Usyk as a stepping stone.
I would just base that on Usyk's last 2 fights at heavyweight.
Sure, okay.
I was very, obviously cruiserweight division, only ever fighter to unify that division, absolutely impressive. But when you step up to the heavyweight division, the big boy league, against Chisora, there's many out there that said Chisora won that fight. I disagree, but it wasn't a foregone conclusion. Chisora, there's times at that fight where you thought, bloody hell. And I don't agree with Fury that, Usyk underperformed to lower AJ. I'm
just
sorry.
A great comment.
It's a great comment, but, when you're in the ring, that is
it just, for me, it just shows Fury's mindset that he's always like trying to wheedle his way into someone's mind and just put a little bit of doubt in there. And I just like the way that he does that. It's quite vicious. Psychologically, it's very vicious, and he does that very well, and he does that quite consistently. But I think, more importantly than even the fight, I need to see some more kind of clips from Usyk where he's, Derek, I'm coming for you, Derek. I need that. He's not
quite
done
got
that.
And the screen time that we would quite like. But there's
two things, though.
There's something weird about him, which everyone seems to warm to, despite the fact that he doesn't speak a word of English. Well, he claims he doesn't.
He doesn't.
But he doesn't in the press conferences and all of that. So, but he's still
what is really worrying me is if you go back to what Jimmy said, that AJ is a confidence fighter, right? And Usyk, similarly to Fury, but in different ways, is able to kind of just make people feel uncomfortable.
Fury's a different breed of fighter to AJ. You see Fury in the violent fight where he's getting hurt, there's blood pissing at his face, and it doesn't matter. He's on the back foot. It brings out almost the best in him. Whereas with AJ, you can see the confidence wane from him when he gets clipped. Even in the Pulev fight where he completely bulldozed him, there were even rounds in that where you could see AJ.
But that's why pre-fight I wanted to see more from Usyk in his kind of crazy, weird ways to just try and get into AJ's head. I mean, I think I even said to Mike a while ago that I was worried that in some way the AJ's promotion team or whatever has kind of like closed down the social media so that Usyk can't kind of do that, the stuff that he normally does. I don't think that is the case, but it just concerns me. I wanted to see more of the weird Usyk. Is fun.
The build-up, the build-up, I have to say, when you look at fights gone by, the build-up has not been at all exciting. There's been no,
not at all.
I think Usyk usually actually that whole mentality or that whole persona is actually more effective against big talkers. So like, for example, I think if Usyk came up against a Fury, where Fury's trying to give the shit, but Usyk just goes, makes funny faces and doesn't give the rise to it. Because we saw that with Tony Bellew, where Bellew was like, all right, I'm going to make a mockery out of this guy, in London. And to be fair, Usyk probably speaks better English than Tony Bellew, but he just didn't get a rise out of Usyk. And I think that really annoyed him. It actually annoyed him more.
Because you could see what Bellew did in the Hay fight is he completely got under his skin.
Completely.
He tried to replicate that against Usyk, and
wasn't going to happen.
Man's cold as ice.
And talking about Usyk now, and what does Usyk need to basically fight a near perfect fight to beat AJ? Because
Ruiz didn't fight a near perfect fight, did he?
True.
He just needs to fight. I think a lot of it is. I think Jim was saying it a minute ago about respect. I think that AJ has a tremendous amount of power. His punches obviously are very heavy blows, right? But even before he's landed any of those, the level of respect that his opponents have typically shown him has been considerable. You can see that they're kind of in awe of his presence. And he has an enormous presence, not just as an individual, but when you just wrap him up in all of the hype and all of the merchandising and all of the promos, this is a towering presence that I think scares people on multiple levels. And that is a key element of his game. And Ruiz quite emphatically took that, he took the left hand, didn't he? And he bounced back up and he just was swinging those arms. And I think he did not show that level of respect. And I think that that is one of the ways in to dent in AJ's confidence. Again, going back to what Jimmy was saying about denting that confidence. But I think also like what Jimmy was saying, AJ gets into fights quickly. He finds his range quickly. He's got a great jab. He's got every opportunity to dominate the fight early on and even to close it early on. based on his prior performances and Usyk's prior performances, where he's taken out a little bit more time to get into the fight, which I think is probably the biggest danger for Usyk, right? Is
Yeah,
at the
he can
time
be
he
a slow. He
is in the
can be
fight,
a
if
bit
you're
of a slow
fighting someone
starter. Yeah.
of AJ's caliber with that level of power, then that might be dangerous for him. But I don't know, like I said, this headache ain't for nothing. I ain't ill. This headache is there because I know something big is happening in the universe. This is gonna be a top draw fight. We're gonna be talking about it for ages to come afterwards. I think the size thing is misleading. I think it's two great fighters. We're gonna get a great fight, and like Jimmy says, hopefully in the future we'll then get one, if not both of them, fighting Fury.
Well, Jim, what do you make of a lot of people have been saying about the mental stamina which is required to fight Usyk? You know, it's like a chess match the whole way through the fight. You know, Johan was just talking there about Usyk. You know, it can sometimes be seen as a bit of a slow starter. You know, he'll put that down to the fact that he's figuring out an opponent, he's feeling them out, and then he comes alive usually in the second half of the fight. Do you think AJ has the mental strength to, you know, to be dealing with that combination punching that is just going to come for 12 rounds?
I think AJ goes into this fight in a far better position, considering the fact that he has lost to Luis. You know, I think that gives him a lot of resources to draw upon. And I think the good thing about AJ is he has fought some really elite fighters, you know, people like Parker, undefeated, you know, goes in against Usyk, undefeated. Yeah, he's beaten those undefeated fighters, you know, he's beaten champions, you know, and I think he should go into that fight confident. I think it's going to be a real test, probably his biggest test, if I'm honest. I don't think there's any fight that he'll ever go into where he'll have as big of a challenge as he does against Usyk, because Usyk's got the skill, he's got the stamina, he's got the mental strength, he's got the experience. You know, AJ has got to utilize his strength, and that reach is one of the small advantages AJ has. Yeah, I don't think AJ is as technically skilled as Usyk, but he has got the range, he has got the power, so he's got to utilize those strengths if he's going to win.
Yeah. Jim, he's been talking, I'm sure there's been some articles where AJ's talked about, what's it called, deep practice or deep concentration or deep training or something that he's doing. So do you think that's related to that? And if it is related to it, why hasn't he just gone in there with the pure size and power rather than this slimmed down, I'm going to learn how to concentrate, maybe he's juggling while standing on his head or something? Why is he doing that and not just going, well, actually, this fight is a slow starter. I'll go and I'll blast him out.
Yeah, the match from approach in the latter part of AJ's career, certainly after the Ruiz fight, is to adopt a far more cautious approach. Yeah. Because AJ's got a lot of strengths, and he can take a punch, but at that level, against that sort of elite fighter like Usyk, he's too big of an asset for them to risk with the bulldozer approach. They know he's agile. Yeah, the good thing about AJ, he may not have the technical ability of Usyk, but he's probably one of the most athletic fighters in boxing. Yeah, he can move. He is agile. Yeah, he's got far more, a bit like Fury. For a man of that size, they move incredibly well. So I think it's about, again, building himself into that fight, building the confidence, because he will go into that fight, I think, with a lot of trepidation, because Usyk is undefeated. You know, he's an Olympic champion. He's a unified cruiserweight champion. You know, the guy has got a good a pedigree as you're ever going to find in the boxing world. So I think their approach is to be pragmatic. What they don't want is AJ to be put away in the first 3 rounds. Yeah, and that could quite happen against someone as good as Usyk. So you've got to adapt and adopt a far more pragmatic and cautious approach, because the beauty that AJ has is, even if he does lose the first few rounds, as long as he's in it and he can see he's hurting Usyk, he's got that power to put him away at any point.
I think also as well, to build on what Jimmy's saying there, is that going into the fight, as soon as that fight starts, AJ does have the automatic advantage of, he will take the center ring and will be able to, you know, will aim to keep Usyk on the outside, and has the ability to be cautious, has the option to be cautious. He doesn't have to go in and lay him out, because the fight is already set up in his advantage. And as we've seen before with AJ, if he employs the right strategy, he's very good at fighting on the back foot, and very strong jab and keeping.
And not to be cynical, Mike. Not to be cynical, but let's be honest. If it goes to the scorecards, boxing, being in the UK, if it's a 50-50 toss-up, we all know which way the fight's going to land.
Yeah, that's very good. That's probably the most. That's probably the key insight of this evening.
Yeah,
I think it's actually very hard to think that it's not going to go to the scorecards, and then I think it's inevitable, and maybe that's why I've got the gut feeling that AJ is going to win for that very reason.
Yeah, Under Armour posters with Usyk are just not going to cut it, are they? They're just not.
I'm not buying my Christmas pajamas from JD Sports if Usyk
Fuck no. All right, anyway, let's get on to some predictions. I know, Johan, you can start off. You've already made it quite clear the whole way through this podcast. You are in favour of AJ. But give us a little breakdown of how you see the fight itself going.
Oh, okay.
And ending, really,
I just think that Jim summed it up. I just think it'll be an exciting fight that lasts the 12 rounds. And I think that AJ will get the nod, and there'll be detractors to that. There'll be people that say, he's not won the fight. I think he will nudge it. I think he'll go to points, win it on points. There'll be an argument for Usyk, but I don't know. It's funny because in a way, I feel that Usyk is the more exciting fighter, and I've enjoyed, with the exception of the Klitschko fight, I've enjoyed more of Usyk's fights. But yeah, this isn't based on anything rational, really. This is my gut, really a genuinely gut feeling.
That's all we have. That's
how it's going to go down.
Yeah. So what you're saying a points win for
points
AJ.
Win for AJ. Yeah.
Any knockdowns in this fight?
Oh yeah, I think there will be. Yeah, I think one of the reasons why he'll win it. No, I think that AJ will knock him down.
Yeah.
I can't see him knocking AJ down. It's not beyond the realms of the possible, but I can't see it happening. I think alternatively, another thing that keeps springing into my mind is an Usyk knockout in round 8, where you've got a kind of Bellew situation where Bellew had worked out a really good game plan, and he had that, he got his own game plan wore him out.
Yeah, you can blow your steam.
Exposed. So there is an element, AJ, that could happen to AJ.
And then we'll get to see Eddie Hearn cradling AJ.
Oh, if only, yeah.
It'd be brilliant.
It'd need more than just his hands. Need Rob McCracken as well, both of them.
Jim, what about you? Your prediction for the fight?
Yeah, I can't. I'll be honest, I can't see it going anywhere but points. I think it's on a knife edge. It's on an absolute knife edge. I can see it going either way. I think Usyk's too skillful for AJ to knock him out.
Yeah.
He's been in there with Chisora. Chisora hit him with some absolute bombs, and he never looked like once drop into the canvas. So yeah, AJ's got power. But I just don't think AJ will be able to unload the combinations that he normally does against someone like Usyk. Usyk is just, 360 plus fights. The guy's seen and done it all. I know, he probably hasn't fought as anyone as powerful as AJ, but I can't see Usyk knocking out AJ, and I can't see AJ knocking out Usyk. I think it goes to points. I think it's on a knife edge, and my heart says AJ, but if I'm honest, my head says Usyk.
Yeah. It's worth pointing out, Jimmy, what you're saying as well, that Usyk has been talking about AJ for a very long time.
Yeah.
Usyk's been talking about AJ for a lot longer than AJ's probably even known who Usyk is or paid any attention. And I think that does have some impact on the fight.
Yeah, they've seen something, isn't it?
Usyk, early on, I'm going back a few years now, interviews with Usyk, and he obviously saw something in AJ that he thought, because he wasn't calling out when they'd asked him about Tyson Fury, people he had no comments. But with AJ, there seemed to be a confidence. And even with he's not said a lot recently, there still seems to be a confidence in him that there's something about AJ that he's seen and noticed for a considerable period of time where he feels like he's got a strong chance. I do think that means something.
The advantage for Usyk is, he does go in as the underdog, and that he has zero pressure. AJ's got 4.
This is the problem that AJ's got, full stop, isn't it? He is always going into fights with the full amount of pressure. He is always expected to win.
And people just expect AJ to put people away, like it's for fun, like he's fighting Charles Martin. The difference in caliber, you just can't. it's on a different Richter scale.
Yeah, but all that being said, he did put away Dillian Waight in pretty impressive fashion. And I love Dillian Waight, right? And I know that Dillian Waight is probably a different fighter now than he was when he was knocked out by AJ. But AJ put him in the hospital. He didn't just knock it, he put him in a hospital. And that's Dillian Waight.
Yeah.
And I would fancy Dillian Waight right now. I would fancy Dillian Waight, but against nearly everyone else apart from AJ.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one. I think I'm the same as I think both of you really. I'm seeing an AJ points win. I don't think it's going to be as dominant as people are expecting with AJ.
Yeah.
I think he struggles against smaller opponents. I think he struggles against the movement of opponents. We saw that against Povetkin, seen that against Takam, seen that against Ruiz. Smaller, agile opponents, I think he'll struggle to pin down. Also, as well, people talking about AJ's size, bully him. I've not really seen AJ bully many opponents in the ring. It's not really a skill, and I think it is a skill that you develop. Chisora has mastered it, but I don't think it's a skill that AJ really has used too many times. So I'm not sure he's going to be able to employ it as well as he would hope. I think obviously it's going to be a battle for Usyk to try and get on the inside and work on AJ, but. I just think AJ, as we've been saying, is a very underrated fighter and a very technically good boxer. And I think he's come a very long way now. And I think he'll be cautious. And I see a points win on his behalf. And as Jim said, I think Usyk is just too skillful, too clever to get knocked out. I think he'll be too elusive, very difficult to pin down. But who knows? Both fighters can be hit. We've seen that There's
a strong argument for both, and that's what makes this fight so exciting.
Usyk's been hit multiple times in the Chisora fight, and if one of those are AJ right hand, he's out. And remember, a southpaw's worst shot is the straight right, which is probably one of AJ's best. But anyway, we've spoken a lot about this fight. We love this fight. We know it's going to be. We're just hoping it's going to live up to the expectation, and I'm really sure it will. But thank you everyone for listening. Please like and subscribe. Keep watching. We've got loads of good fights coming up. Tyson Fury, Wilder, Terence Crawford, and Sean Porter. Great fight coming up. But I'll leave it to you two to just sign off for me.
Yeah, enjoy the fight, everyone. It's going to be a great fight. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Look forward to
catching up with everyone after the fight.
Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.